The days are longer, the calendar is filling up, and I want to feel as good as this beautiful summer weather. That's why I've been loving Groons. It's one daily pack of gummies that covers my greens, vitamins, and minerals, and even has 6 grams of prebiotic fiber, so I don't need to juggle a complicated wellness routine on top of everything else. They taste amazing. They're easy to toss in my bag on the go. Plus, they're vegan, gluten-free, and HSA, FSA eligible for reimbursement. Save up to 52% off with promo code podcast at Groons.co. That's code podcast at GRUNS.co.
It's the Go Gopher Podcast with Mike Grimm, episode number 98. I am Mike Grimm, voice of the Golden Gophers, and welcome back to our podcast. This week on the Go Gopher Podcast, we'll have a post-mortem on the 2023 Golden Gopher football season. We'll have a visit with Gopher Illustrated's Ryan Burns. He'll break down the season. He'll talk about the developing quarterback situation, his expectations of the bowl game, and the approaching off-season. We'll also have the voice of Gopher Volleyball, Tanner Hoops, with us. We'll get a preview of this week's NCAA Tournament appearance for the Golden Gophers in Omaha. Our Go Gopher Podcast is presented by alumni-owned Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. If you're a business founder planning to exit your business, start by contacting Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. Sunbelt serves more businesses up to $5 million in revenue than anyone, and True North M&A serves companies with revenues up to $150 million. Get a confidential, no-cost, no-obligation business valuation started today. Make the most of your life's work. Visit sunbeltminnesota.com or tnma.com today. Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union is also one of our major supporters of the Go Gopher Podcast. Life math is complicated, and Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union makes it easier with local financial experts available to help in person or virtually. You can learn more at affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. That's affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. They have a top-ranked mobile app, so check that out as well. And the official grocer of the Golden Gophers is Cub, and proud also to be a sponsor of our Go Gopher Podcast. In a hurry, don't worry, Cub delivers. Get fresh meat, produce, and everyday essentials delivered to your door. Our podcast is also sponsored by State Farm agent Tony Hoagland at ChamplinInsurance.com. We're podcasting episode 98 from the Aquarius Home Services studio. We invite you to subscribe to the Go Gopher Podcast. It's free to subscribe and free to listen at any point. You can go back and listen to the Go Gopher Podcast from previous weeks, including last episode, for example. We had a terrific visit with Gopher football player Chris Ottman-Bell. This week, we're still talking Golden Gopher football. We'll recap the season with our buddy Ryan Burns from Gopher Illustrated when we come back on episode 97.
I'm Clay Geary, walk-on turned scholarship wide receiver for Gopher football.
And I'm Ben Utek, U of M alumni, Super Bowl champion, and Tony Dungy Uncommon Award winner.
We understand championship culture, which is why we're part of the True North family of companies.
True North invests in only elite teams, like the champion team at Sunbelt Business Advisors, Minnesota's largest seller of companies. To learn more about True North and our diverse family of independently owned companies, visit TrueNorthEquityPartners.com.
When we say that Cub milk is the freshest in town, we mean it. Less than 48 hours from farm to store fresh. We guarantee 7 days or more of freshness. It all starts with local dairy farmers who take great care in making sure all the cows are happy and healthy. We support local farm families 365 days a year. And that makes our milk even more delicious. So you always get the freshest milk and the biggest smiles.
Episode 98 of the Go Gopher Podcast rolls on, and we're going to do a little post-mortem on the 2023 regular season for Minnesota football. Of course, there's a bowl game upcoming. Ryan Burns from Gopher Illustrated returns to the podcast. Burnsy, good to see you.
Good to see you, Grimmer. I know you and I have spent a lot of time together here this season at press conferences, had a couple of gentlemen's bets that unfortunately didn't go your way.
That's what you're going to come out firing with, huh? Come right out firing with. I can't even remember what they are, but I do owe you, I think, a dinner in Indianapolis and a couple of drinks.
Yes, I think that's going to be the case, whether it's in a random bowl game or whether it's in Indianapolis next year.
Well, we don't need to get into specifics on what those were. Suffice it to say, Michigan beating Ohio State was the meal bet.
Was beneficial for me,
Yes.
and then we had an Iowa versus Rutgers handshake that you were thinking Minnesota East was going to get it done with Kirk
I did think they were.
and Joe Harris-Simiak, and I think that day the Rutgers Scarlet Knights got shut out
22-0, and but I had I had odds. You gave me odds.
I did.
It was a value bet.
I was cordial about it.
Lost.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I took a value bet and lost on that one. I did think the Scarlet Knights would get the Hawks that day, but the Hawks are in Indianapolis this weekend. So you and I are recording this. We got to preface this because it's Wednesday morning. So by the time someone might listen to this on Friday, there could be new news, different news. There likely will be new news and different news. We may know what bowl game Minnesota's going to. I think we feel pretty solid as we talk that it's likely going to end up in the Motor City and playing against a MAC team. But depending on what happens this weekend and how the playoff shuffle goes and who goes to the Orange Bowl, believe it or not, will have an impact potentially on where Minnesota ends up. There are varying, house of cards that could tumble here or there. Minnesota will go to a bowl game. Who will be the quarterback? Who will all be left? We shall see. But before we get into all of that, I do want to put a postmortem on the season. Keegan Cook, the Gopher volleyball coach, I don't think this is his own comment, but he talked about it this week. He said the days are long and the weeks are short. And I think that was true with football as well, because I sit here and I'm thinking, I'd get into work early, I'd get home late, didn't see my family much. But how in the hell are we already at the end of the football season, right? It just flew by. But yet it seemed like those days took forever to get through.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like just yesterday we were at St. Elmo's in Indianapolis, you, me, DT, and Andy Greeter and Randy Johnson trying to think and prognosticate what this season was going to hold for this team. And now it feels like Thanksgiving was 6 months ago with the way that the portal and everything else has kind of transpired. But I mean, that's the thing, is everybody is so excited to get to the start line, which was obviously that Nebraska game and the way it concluded with Dragan Kesic, now Big Ten Kicker of the Year, Dragan Kesic. And then obviously in November to forget when they go 0-4, allow 35 points per game in it. A lot of ebbs, a lot of flows, but it's something to where, to your point, I mean, I'm already looking forward to seeing what it looks like against North Carolina next season. There's a lot of things that are going to look a lot different for this team in Fleck's 8th year, but I mean, it always goes by far too quickly.
It does fly by. And now let's take a look back, because it's amazing how emotions, and I think it's more so than ever in sports in general, particularly here in Minnesota, where there's a kind of this toxic environment from a standpoint that there just hasn't been a lot of winning at a high level from anybody, professional sports, college sports, what have you, of the major college sports. And so it's quick that people will jump on the bandwagon, and even quicker people jump off, and all of that. You think about October the 28th, which happened to be my birthday. That's why I remember the day. Minnesota was coming off of the week before a win in Iowa City, beating Iowa there for the first time since 1999 and for the first time in general since 2014. They come back and they have a pretty solid win against Michigan State where they absolutely dominated the second half. Jordan Newman was player of the week in the Big Ten. They're sitting in really good shape, quite frankly, at that point as we head into November from October 28th on. And if you had told me that Minnesota would be 5-7 and sneaking in on the APR and playing in Detroit, I would have lost some more drinks to you at that bet. I'm guessing you would probably were thinking the same.
Yeah, I mean, you have so many highs and so many lows in just a short amount of time. To your point, you have the Jordan Newman game where he runs for 200 yards, breaks 10 tackles. And then in the entire month of November, he gets 87 carries and he only breaks 8 tackles, according to Pro Football Focus. And you have a defensive implosion like we haven't seen in some time. If I were to even told you in that Illinois game, with 85 seconds left, John Paddock comes in off the bench, hasn't thrown a pass in over a month, in its 4th and 11. And that's a Minnesota defense that day was as disruptive as we saw all season. They had, I think, 8 tackles for loss. They'd forced 3 turnovers. They were playing pretty decently.
a big game back.
And then 3 plays later, they're in the end zone, and that was kind of the precipice for what would set up the rest of the month was defensive implosions. The next week against Purdue, you're banged up in the back end, but 49 points to a Purdue team can't happen. And then obviously Ohio State and then Wisconsin here. It's just, as much as it was the Michigan State game to me, I think back to that John Paddock 3-play series where if Trey Jones doesn't slip out of his break on 4th down, Minnesota gets a PBU there, the game's over. What does it look like next week against Purdue? I don't know.
I agree. I think and the head coach and I disagree on this because we talked about it on his coach's show after the Purdue loss. I do believe, as much as they don't want to believe in momentum and hangovers and all this stuff, I believe those 3 plays turned the rest of the final stretch of the season. I don't think there's any doubt that defense isn't bad enough to give up 49 the next week.
Right.
They were empty. I'm not saying that they weren't trying. I'm not saying it was intentional. None of that. But, I don't care how big of a competitor you are. You have the game won, in essence. Your dreams are still alive. Newbin, Spanford, Bo, these guys all came back hoping to get to Indianapolis. You're literally a play away from it. And then boom, 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 in just a dramatic, devastating fashion, the dream is over. It's over. And I don't care how big of a competitor you are. It was clear to me that they just couldn't summon the edge that's needed to win a Big Ten game the next week. It was, again, not malicious, not on purpose, none of that. It happens. It happens in sports. Sometimes after a win, it's a letdown. Sometimes after a devastating loss, you just can't summon what you need to summon. I believe that was the case. Ohio State, that's a one-off. You're not going to, I don't care how much edge you have. That's a tough look.
Especially
in my lifetime. Like in my lifetime, the gap between the top and the middle and the bottom's never been bigger in the Big Ten. There's never been a gap this big from Ohio State and Michigan to the third, and then certainly the fourth, fifth on down. It just hasn't been that case. So that those are punts. That's not going to happen. And then Wisconsin, great start. You're up 14-7, controlling the game, and offense sputters a couple of times around that 40-45-yard line, and all of a sudden everything goes south. But I agree. I think, frankly, the turning point that those 3 plays against Illinois could change the trajectory of the whole thing. I think they've got to figure some things out here this offseason, clearly now with what we're seeing with transfer portal and everything else, and try to get this thing steered back properly.
Yeah, you always try to think about in hindsight, being 2020, where the inflection point was, and that's where I point to is that 3-play series where you're winning. That should be a game that you absolutely win. Probably 95, 98.
I think their win percentage was 98% at that point.
Again, 4th and 11 and a backup quarterback who hadn't thrown a pass in a month. You have to
4th and 11 from the 14, not
correct.
Like the other 14. Yeah. The other 14.
Exactly. They had to drive 85 yards to be able to win the game, and they did. And that's where if you win that game, you're 6-3. I know the head coach, like you discussed, doesn't believe in momentum.
They're going to win the next week. They are. They're going to beat Purdue the next week.
And then they're 7-3 going into Ohio State. And what happens in that Wisconsin game?
Right.
I have no idea. But, I mean, that's even where I think back to what does the offense potentially look like. Even go back to that North Carolina game where Cole Kramer comes in the game for one play. Because the quarterback, I think it was cramps during that game in that late third quarter. If he just hits Daniel Jackson wide open in the middle of the field, what happens there going forward? I don't know. I mean, there's so many different if-then hypotheticals to me. But, I mean, if you're going to point to one specific thing from that season, it's that final drive defensively against Illinois. That was the turning point.
Yeah, I agree. And you hope it's not the turning point in a shift, like it, I've seen where programs can shift positive or negative based on some weird stuff, and it takes years to recover. I don't think that will be the case here, but you got to be on the lookout. You got to make sure you've got some things in order, I think, here, and certainly a tumultuous, week following. The one thing I want to preface my questions with you here is that this isn't uncommon. Like everybody lives in their own world. Purdue, I think, has 14 transfers, right, announced, and everyone in West Lafayette's losing their mind. Oh, my God, Ryan Walters has lost the locker. No, this is normal. When the season's over for Michigan and Iowa, the regular season, there's going to be people that are going to announce.
100%.
And the Gophers aren't done losing players. They're going to have to add players. Signing day's coming up. We'll get to all that stuff. But before everyone just panics and says, oh, my God, what's going on there, this is the new normal, folks. Everybody's going to have it. In fact, the quarterback transferring and the fact that the Gophers hadn't lost a starting quarterback or have been starting a guy who was a transfer makes them the not normal team. Like every team in the Big Ten West except Minnesota this year was starting a transfer.
Correct.
And in Iowa's case, their second transfer. In Illinois' case, their second transfer. Their backup that ended up starting was also a transfer. So this isn't unnormal. Should we panic? I don't know. But if you're going to panic for the right thing. Like, to me, the question now is, who are you going to get? right? And, remains to be seen where that all heads. But anyway, how surprised were you when news broke on Tuesday midday that Ethan Kalik-Manis was leaving the program?
Yeah, just transfer portal overall, it's a lot different to your point than it was 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. I think last season Minnesota had 15 scholarship transfers. Where does that rank in the Big Ten West? About exactly average. Mm-hmm. Every Big Ten West team lost double-digit kids to the transfer portal last year. It's just the world we live in now. And so far as we record this today on Wednesday, Minnesota's lost, I believe, 4 guys via scholarship so far. It's probably going to end up being double digits again by the time the portal closes for the final time in the spring.
Right.
But with Ethan, I don't think I was incredibly surprised. I think that with the way that the season went, and especially kind of the way that November went for him, I think it was clear Minnesota had to add competition to that quarterback room. And now they had been all in on him since 2019 when he committed. I mean, they went as far as not taking a scholarship quarterback in that 2020 recruiting class. Ethan was a part of the 21 recruiting class, but he committed all the way back in 2019. And these were some of the things you had to do to get your 4-star quarterback to be able to sign at a place like the University of Minnesota. So they had been all in on him for 5 years. He's got 17 starts, and you look at from start 1 this year or just in general to where he ended, and I don't know that you could have seen enough progress to say that you can't go out and find a viable competition-level quarterback in the transfer portal. And I think in today's world, competition does a lot of things to a lot of people. And that's where I think if you were to ask Ethan's side, they would tell you Minnesota probably didn't develop him as correctly. And I think if you ask Minnesota side, they know that especially with the way the season went and the way it ended, they have to bring in more competition in every position, and that includes quarterback. And so when Minnesota made a transfer offer to a young man out of New Hampshire, of all places, who's an FCS-level quarterback, I don't know that it went over too well, and I think it culminated in him intending to put his name into the portal when it opens on Monday.
Yeah, and I was wondering, I have no idea. You are, maybe into the recruiting scene much more. I do not pay near as much attention, clearly, as you do. And I don't know if we know the answer. Did the Gophers offer? I think you're right. PJ talked about competition without really saying it in the post-game press conference and in his interview with JG on the radio network. That one of the answers is going to be in this realignment year. Now that they know what they know, that they're going to add competition. He didn't specifically say competition at quarterback, but I think that was a clear insinuation. The question is, do you think that they had an inkling that Ethan was thinking about this, and so they're like, we got to add competition anyway? Or do you think they were going to add competition, they offered, and Ethan said, okay, not that he's scared of competition, but that, I'm getting out of here once they offer the quarterback? Or do you think it was, okay, we're not sure this guy's going to be around, so we're going to add competition anyway?
I think the truth's somewhere in between.
Yeah. Because I thought the tone absolutely changed
after that Wisconsin game.
I thought before that. I thought the way the way Ethan talked, and you asked him a couple of pretty pointed questions at final one. I thought that was he answered in a couple of interesting ways. And I thought PJ the last 2 weeks, the way he had early, if you go back and listen to how he talked about Ethan, I thought the answers were different the last 2 weeks. After the Purdue game.
I think it might have been, and again, this is you and I speculating, purely our conjecture, that it would be, I think the head coach finally realized that if they're going to move forward and he's going to have a job here, there's got to be a lot more competition in this room. And that's where Cole Kramer, likely your starter in the bowl game, sticking around for one more game. But that quarterback room had to change. There had to be an infusion of older talent, of guys that you can go out, and to your point, I mean, Iowa's backup quarterback, Deacon Hill, was a Wisconsin transfer. John Paddock came from Ball State. You can find quarterbacks in the portal. You can. And that's where, especially for where Minnesota is likely going to be proverbial, shopping, I would say, for transfer quarterbacks, that group of 5 to FCS range, you can go find those guys, and they can absolutely want to come to a Big Ten school even without the promise of money. But you had to make sure that I just don't think Ethan was, and I think I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that you would agree, he wasn't consistent enough from game 1 to game 12, especially in that month of November when there are guys open And he's just not hitting them. That's where you had to add more competition to push him, and it just worked out the way that it did.
Right, and I also thought the offense was. I thought the offense was so choppy all year. It never got into a rhythm. Some of that certainly, I think, was the quarterback, missing some things, receivers dropping passes, but I also just think the rhythm was never there. Like they ran in clear passing situations way too much, and if that was because they didn't trust the quarterback, then why? I don't know if they gave him enough chances to either prove trust or not. And so some of that philosophically to me has to change, particularly if you're going to go out shopping for quarterbacks, because the quarterback's going to watch game film and say, I'm not coming there to throw 17 times a day.
Right. And so you're trying to figure out, and that's what you and I are trying to figure out, is how much of it was philosophy, how much of it was the injuries of you're on Jordan Newbin by mid-October. And again, great story, a kid who works incredibly hard. But when you get to your primary running back in November is breaking a tackle 1 every 11 carries, you know this offense like I do. It's so difficult.
Yeah.
But again, the passing game was choppy all season. We've seen that now for years, regardless of, Mike Sanford, Kirk Shiraka, and now Greg Harbaugh. They have to get it fixed, and that's where it's going to be. I mean, they're putting a lot of stock to me in Greg Harbaugh is going to have to be the one that fixes this, because you had an inflection point, and I keep saying that word, but you had a decision to make between Ethan and potentially Greg Harbaugh. Who do you kind of put more of it on? And with Harbaugh still obviously being on the staff here, I think they're going all in on that Harbaugh and this offensive staff can fix the problems that, to your point, the rhythm was off the entire season. They couldn't find flow, especially in the third quarter of games where I don't know that I think they scored 3 points in the month of November in the third quarter.
Yeah, it was crazy.
I mean, they just kept, and then you go back and watch, and it's just execution. It's guys are open or there's a block to be made, and the guys just don't make it. So there's a lot of things that they obviously got to figure out on offense, but that's where with Ethan going to be in the portal, it's going to be on Greg Harbaugh primarily here to fix the issues that plague this offense, and that's going to be with a new quarterback.
Yeah, and I don't want to ask you to look in your magic 8-ball for any specifics. There's going to be literally 100 quarterbacks in the portal. Yep. What do you think the target range skill set that they're going to look for? And I mean, are they going to go to try to find do what Iowa did and go find an existing Power 5 backup somewhere that they think's starter ready? Or are they going to do, what, others have done where you go get a guy at a lower level and see if he can elevate his play? And they've done that at other positions, Minnesota has, knowing also there's going to be competition for quarterbacks, because that's the marquee position in winning. I mean, to me, that at the end of the day, you got great quarterback play, you got a great chance to win. You don't, it's hard to win.
Well, that's where you even look at, you brought up earlier, Ethan was the lone returning type of starter that in the Big Ten West wasn't a transfer. And then you look at those 6 transfer quarterbacks and you go, was it kind of worth it to be able to go out? I think the only one, Mordecai,
was okay.
He was okay. He was injured for
I'll disagree with the head coach there, too. Afterwards, after the Wisconsin game, he goes, that's a big-time Big Ten quarterback. Stealing my phrase, by the way. Big-time Big Ten quarterback. He goes, that's what they look like. I don't know. Like he was okay.
He was just collected.
He's a guy.
He was poised. That's about the thing you would say about him. And when things broke down around him, he obviously knew how to use his legs.
He had a great game against the Gophers. But I'm saying his body of work, and I know he was injured.
But you go from throwing, I think, 25-plus touchdowns each year, if not 30 at SMU, to I think he threw 5 this year.
Yeah,
or you could argue the best quarterback of the lot. Now, Cade McNamara got hurt, but was Hudson Card. But you look at Indiana, you look at Nebraska. How did that? Nebraska was
disaster,
complete disaster. So now you're going to be playing in that pool where across the country, outside of say Notre Dame with Sam Hartman, I would argue, it went pretty well. And so now you got to go play in the pool. So what does the pool look like? Well, with the true freshman also transferring, I think you got to bring in 2 transfer quarterbacks. I think you go for one that's experienced, maybe a graduate transfer, someone that they really like is a kid from New Hampshire. I mentioned him earlier, a kid by the name of Max Broswell. I think it's biochem is his major, someone who's very smart. We'll see if Minnesota is able to potentially get his commitment in the next couple of weeks. But then you also got to take more of a project. Maybe someone that was a Power 5 backup as a redshirt freshman, say. Someone that you can bring into this room that you can develop, but also Minnesota really likes their high school commit from Fayetteville, Arkansas, and Drake Lindsay, who's got someone that they're very high on. I've seen him in person. I like his arm talent. I think he's got like 88 touchdowns and like 7 interceptions, Grimmer, in his high school career.
How worried do they have to be at signing? He hasn't signed anything.
With Arkansas, obviously now potentially, I don't know if it's official yet, getting Bobby Petrino back on
That's
staff.
incredible, by the way. That can be a whole new podcast.
Only in college football can something like that happen. I'll tell you that much. I'm not worried here as we sit here today. Now, a lot can and will change in the next 3 weeks. I think Minnesota's going to go see him in a state championship game this weekend. But, there's a lot of things where if you're Drake Lindsay and you look at the quarterback room right now, there isn't a single quarterback that is on the roster right now on scholarship that was on the Wisconsin game roster that is going to be here. So if you want to come in and potentially compete early at a Power 5 institution, here is your opportunity, young man.
Yeah, and the other question I have, and PJ is a salesman. There's no question about that. I like Harbaugh. In terms of relations, I remember watching him coach tight ends, thinking that guy can coach, right? Mm-hmm. I can't witness it enough in terms of quarterback play yet to know. Plus, when I do have some benefit of being at practice, the quarterbacks are always in the middle of the field, so the tight ends were always on the sideline, and that's where we were.
Correct.
And so I had a close in look at how he coached those tight ends the last few years, and I'm always like, that guy can coach. So what kind of sales job are those guys going to have to do? Because look, if I'm a quarterback or I'm the parent of a quarterback and it's my son, I want the best situation for him, and I'm going to take a hard look if I'm serious about it and say, They didn't throw the ball that much.
Right. And especially historically.
Yeah. And what are they going to have to tell a young man who has maybe aspirations on playing at the next level and say, hey, we can get you there?
I think it would be trying to sell them on this is what we were, but this is what we want to be. Now, it's obviously going to be.
But do they want that? Do you think they want to shift?
I think they want to throw more, but the question becomes, and it's like we've talked about for now 7 full years of PJ Fleck, what does it look like when the head coach is happy with the passing game? Because one of the things Fleck loves to talk about is even back in that 2019 season where you have Bateman, Johnson, and everybody else, they weren't throwing it more than 23, 25, 27 times a game on average. They were just one of the most efficient teams in the passing game in America.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happens when you have NFL receivers. Now, I think you got one coming back, obviously, in Daniel Jackson, but it's trying to pitch what the offense could look like. If they have what I would imagine, say, is a viable quarterback that can make accurate throws, that this is what this offense would look like. We don't have to be running as much, and we can throw the ball 25 times a game. I think selling them any more than that is just being disingenuous, as you and I have covered this team as closely as anyone. Mm-hmm. If you can just throw the ball 25 times a game, we're talking about at the end of the season, you're throwing it 300-something times, especially if you got a bowl game. So with the way that this thing is shifting, especially going into 2024, where you lead off with North Carolina, who's going to have their own brand new transfer quarterback, and then you have USC, UCLA, you're going to have to throw the ball more. You're not going to be able to – you're going to be in a lot more up and down games where you can't just sit on the ball. And so that would be my pitch if I'm Greg Harbaugh and PJ Fleck is – this is what we were. This is what we had to be because of what they would deem different issues. But as we move forward now into this immediate season, this is what we have to be, and this is the vision for it.
What kind of money is it going to take to get a quarterback? I don't know if you know specifics. If you do, offer them up. If not, no biggie. But, you're not going to get a guy for free, right?
If you're expecting to get, some of these 4 and 5 star guys who are proven or just proven Power 5 guys, they're not going to be in that pool. That pool is going to be $250,000, if not higher. I'm telling you, I've heard some numbers already thrown around, especially if that young man from Duke, Riley Leonard, potentially hits the portal. That could be a 7-figure.
That dude is a stud, by the way.
He is really good, and he's going to be playing in the NFL one day, which is why he's going to be worth to a specific. The way I think about NIL is there are 15 teams that are playing in a different pool by themselves. And when the portal opens on Monday, you're going to see those 15 teams. You're going to see and hear ungodly amounts of money, 6-7 figures potentially. And then once it starts to whittle down after that initial flurry, then it becomes, okay, who's left and who can we go after with the promise of little, and by little NIL, somewhere in the 5 figures, maybe 4-figure range, that we can. It's not about NIL. If it's about NIL for you, you're not going to end up at the University of Minnesota at the end of the day. But if you want to have a chance to come to a Big Ten institution, improve yourself, and start, and I mean, I looked at the numbers.
There's still some attractiveness to it.
100%.
Yeah, no doubt. You got to figure that the guy that's going from Duke to A&M, that quarterback could end up just following him there because A&M's got some coffers.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's one of those 15 teams that has millions, if not tens of millions, available to them. God bless Texas oil money. Mm-hmm. But yes, if that young man hits the portal between Texas A&M and I would say Notre Dame, I think that man is going to be very set for quite a long time if he's smart about his money.
Yeah, no doubt. I watched Northwestern Duke game because I think the Gophers played Northwestern the following week. Mm-hmm. And the big takeaway I had from that game was how good that kid is.
Yeah, he is, especially when he was healthy. I mean, he dealt with a lot of injuries, ankle injuries specifically, but yeah, Riley Leonard's his name. If he is one of the best quarterbacks in college football when he's healthy, and especially when you look at what he did at a place like Duke against these Power 5 teams, quality teams in the ACC there. Yeah, he is going to be in for a payday if he chooses to.
So you think 2 transfer quarterbacks and the freshman from Arkansas will be, and then Max Shikenjansky will be.
Yeah, who's going to be your backup for the bowl game?
Yeah.
The young man from Stillwater, the walk-on there. Obviously, his father.
Yeah,
with the Gopher basketball connection there. But if it's me, I'm bringing in a grad transfer, potentially from the Group of 5, potentially from the FCS that is experienced, multiple years of starting. You can say you are going to be the prohibitive favorite to start for a Big Ten team in 2024. And then I would go and look and try to get more of a developmental guy from potentially Group of 5, potentially Power 5, where, again, if NIL's their thing, it's not going to be here. But if you want to have a chance to be the number 2, where, as we've seen for so many years across college football, especially in the Big Ten,
you're going to play sometime.
You are going to play. And so then you will have your opportunity there. But that's what I would do, older guy, younger guy, and then hopefully get the kid from Fayetteville, Arkansas, and Drake Lindsay signed in 3 weeks.
All right, so you have a busy time coming up. As you mentioned, signing days in 3 weeks. Where do the Gophers currently rank, and how many more guys do you think they need committed or want to commit?
So they got 3 weeks till signing day today. They have the number 30 class in the country as we currently sit here today via 24/7 Sports.
Which relative to history is pretty good.
Which is, especially for a team that's not going to promise a lot in NIL, it's really good. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's where it's going to be for them. Can they hold on to a couple of these in-state kids like Coy Parrish, who's going to take visits to 2 of the top 4 teams in the college football playoff, or I think top 6 or top 8 now in Ohio State and Florida State. Jade Abasiri from Prior Lake just got a USC offer as well. I mean, I think this is as good of a class as they've had committed, and I know that a lot of people don't want to hear that because of just the way that November went, but if they can hold on to this class, I think it's another good building block for them, but it becomes for them how much, and I think this is the question they're going to answer for us over the next 3 weeks, is how many more high school kids do you want to add versus how many kids from the portal do you want to take for January? Mm-hmm. And so that's the balancing the future versus the now, especially after a 5-7 season. I wish I had the answer for you of how many more they should take from the high school ranks. I think they got around 20 to 22 high school kids committed right now. But I also think that they've seen the holes like we have, where if you can go get out in the portal and get some guys that can play at a Power 5 level to fill some of these holes, I think I'd give that a long look, too.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously at quarterback, they'll need to do that. All right, so you'll be busy. Do you got any great deals at Gopher Illustrated going right now?
Yeah.
Pennies a day or something?
Yeah, if you want to come hang out with us between now and looks like it would be around New Year's Eve, it's $1 to get behind the paywall to see what's going to happen with Minnesota in the portal. Can Minnesota hang on to some of their high school commits? The coaches from Minnesota will be hitting the road starting on Friday, and it's that last gaps all the way until National Signing Day. And obviously the transfer portal. So it's going to be a lot of ebbs and flows. There's going to be a lot of emotions involved. So it's only $1 to get behind the paywall. GopherIllustrated.com.
Well, we appreciate you spending time with us. I know you're about to record one of your other podcasts, Pair and a Spare, just down the hall from where we're recording now. How can people listen to that?
On the as Justin Gard would tell me, on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcast. Plus, we got another one that gets a little bit more deep in the weeds called Gopher Gridiron Radio, where a lot of pregame, postgame, and just in-depth looks at where this program is heading under PJ Fleck.
Yeah, you've got a lot going on, man. You'll be busy.
Yes, we will. It's that time of year.
And we'll see you in Detroit probably.
We'll see you at the bowl game. I think you and I have spent enough Christmases in Detroit, so we'll see if that's where they end up once again.
Merry Christmas, man.
Merry Christmas to you, Greg.
There he is, Ryan Burns, Gopher Illustrated, Gopher Gridiron Radio, Parent of Spare. He's a busy man. We thank him for his time. We really probably could go, hours, but we wanted to give you a little bit of a recap of the season. We're talking Gopher volleyball next here on the Go Gopher podcast. It's episode number 98.
Hi, Gopher fans. Switching is easy. We do it all the time. We switch on lights, we switch TV channels, we switch on the TV. And with the new transfer portal, some college students even switch colleges, which can seem crazy to us diehard fans. But what's not crazy is how you can switch and save with State Farm. In fact, my agency can switch you over so we can start saving today. My team is ready to welcome you to the State Farm neighborhood and show you it is, in fact, easy to switch and save. When you want the real deal, check us out at ChamplinInsurance.com. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Mike Grimm back with you for Affinity Plus, your local credit union proudly serving Minnesota since 1930. As a current Gopher student or a proud Gopher alum, you are eligible to join a financial that wants to build a meaningful banking relationship and put you first. Meet with a local employee at any of their branches statewide, including one right off campus on University in Minneapolis. To learn more or find another way to connect, go to affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. That's affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union, federally insured by NCUA, and a proud sponsor of the Go Gopher podcast. Episode 98 rolls on. We talked football in the opening segment, and we're going to shift gears now to Golden Gopher volleyball, which, of course, just wrapped up the regular season under first-year head coach Keegan Cook. First year at Minnesota. He's not a first-year head coach. It was an interesting season for Keegan Cook, who came here from Washington to take over for Hugh McCutcheon. And the man who has called those games on the radio, the voice of Gopher volleyball, is Tanner Hoops, our buddy from the Gopher Radio Network. He works with us on Gopher football and occasionally fills in on Gopher basketball, both men's and women's, when Guardsy or I have football or other conflicts or we're sick or what have you. And Tanner, good to see you.
Great seeing you, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Well, first of all, how excited are you? You're going to be headed to Omaha here soon. As we record this on Wednesday morning, you and the team will head down to Omaha. Creighton will be the host of this opening weekend. Minnesota and Utah State, Creighton and Colgate. That's the first two matches on Friday. The winners will play Saturday for a trip to the Sweet 16. What's your excitement level personally to have another crack at calling some NCAA tournament action?
Yeah, I think you might look from afar at the season, maybe look on paper and think that there's not a whole lot of reason to be excited. We're on the road for the first weekend of the tournament. That's something fairly new for us, a record 16-12. But I think there's a lot of buzz, and I think there's palpable buzz for good reason as we get set to go down there. The team has seemed to turn a corner. We've won 6 of our last 8, played some really good volleyball here over the home stretch of the season that helped us get into the tournament. And talked about that after the bracket was revealed Sunday night. He's like, we've been in the tournament basically in our minds for a few weeks now. We've been playing postseason volleyball because, it's felt like we've had to play that well to get into the tournament. And, we feel like we're playing our best volleyball right now. This is the best time of year to be doing so. Creighton obviously is going to be a really tough place to go and play. They're a great team, and they're hosting for a reason. But we played them back in September, took them to 5 sets in our non-conference finale when we really hadn't hit our stride yet. So we feel pretty good going down there. Utah State obviously is not a team you can overlook. They won their conference for a reason, and there's a lot of good players over there, and they've got a tradition, history of success, and making this tournament as they did a season ago. So, nothing you can take lightly. Everything's going to come hard and be something you have to earn. But, we feel like why not us as we go down there, that we should be feeling as confident as anybody.
Yeah, and, when you look at the 4-team bracket, it's interesting because Utah State amongst the 4 teams and how it's seeded out by the committee, technically are the 2 seed, I guess. It's, in the region, it's the 3 seed, but within this 4 group, this foursome of teams, they would be 2, Minnesota would be 3, and then Colgate would be 4. Obviously, Creighton would be 1. So I guess in a weird way, way, as you mentioned, it's a little uncommon. The Gophers travel too. That even in the opening round, technically on paper at least, they'd be the underdog, and the Aggies really rolled through the Mountain West. And this I think on paper, Gopher fans would look, casual fans especially, and say, "Oh, Utah State, wow, they'll get in and see what they can do against Creighton." But I don't think they can't look past the Aggies, right?
No, I mean, they're a good team. They obviously play in a conference that has produced a lot of good volleyball talent. They got upset, I think, a little bit of a wake-up call in their tournament semifinals. They play a conference tournament in the Mountain West, and after not losing since, I think, September 30th, they get bounced in their tournament opener. So, they're a team that maybe got a little bit of a wake-up call or a gut check, whatever you want to call it there. They're going to come into it knowing what the expectation is for them. And, they're probably in the same boat as us where they're thinking, well, we got to go to Creighton. We got to find a way to knock off them. And, and nobody should be overlooked in this region. And, that's the beauty of this tournament. Crazy things happen. And I think when we're still coming out of the wake of the COVID effects, what have you, when you've got all these seniors who've been there 6-7 years, experience and depth really is more important than it ever has been. Funny things happen in this tournament, and it's one of those things you really got to buckle down. You got to play all 3, 4, 5 sets, whatever it may be, and nothing you can take for granted.
Yeah, and then when you look at this bracket as well, after I just set the stage saying, hey, no one can overlook anybody, and I believe that to be true, I also look at the bracket and know that Minnesota, as you mentioned, for really the last 5 or 6 weeks was considered a bubble team. I think they felt solidly in once they, completed that last 3 weekends. Particularly, they beat Illinois on that Friday this past Friday, and that probably, if there was any doubt, cinched it up. That said, and having set the backdrop as, hey, they can't overlook anybody, I think they got a pretty decent draw here, right? I mean, they don't have to go too far from home. Fans can drive down there from Minneapolis. Utah State's not. Look, they're going to be hard. You can't overlook them all that, but it's not, somebody from a Power 5 conference. I think the draw is favorable if they play their game.
I was telling a few folks on Selection Sunday before the bracket was released that I wouldn't want to play us right now, that, there's going to be a team that gets a top 16 seed, earn that right to host a regional, get to be the favorite to come out of it, and they're going to draw us. They're going to get a Big Ten team that's been playing their best volleyball here for the last month or so, and in Creighton's case, a team that took them to 5 sets, had a great match with them 3 months ago. So I think we're a tough draw. I think we're a team that goes in there that nobody's going to want to see. Obviously everybody's been playing good volleyball in order to get there, but I like where we're at right now. It's a different team from the start of the season as you want to be. You always want to grow, evolve, and get better over the course of the season, and we have. And I think we're really feeling confident where we are, and we obviously know that. Nothing's a given. You still got to go out there and play. You're happy that you've seemed to have turned a corner, but this is December. We flip the calendar and it's completely different. It's a different atmosphere and a different animal this time of year.
And I think even the head coach Keegan Cook made the comment that he called it this week in his news conference that Minnesota would be an uncomfortable matchup for the other team because of what you just said, that maybe the middle portion of the season wasn't great. And I know there was a tipping point at one point, which I'll ask you about here in a minute, but I like the way he phrased that someone that looks at that bracket, if you're Utah State or Creighton, you might feel a little uncomfortable that's not your normal in the opening round. You get a 4-team bracket. That's not the normal 3 seed, probably based on how the Gophers are playing right now.
No, I mean, no disrespect to any other conference, but, the Big East, the Mountain West, it's just not the Big Ten. You go through that grind and you schedule the way that Keegan and that Hugh and Mike before him and, Gopher Volleyball has traditionally scheduled your non-conference, and it all prepares you for this moment. It's awfully tough to roll into the tournament with an undefeated season, something like that. And, we know that going into it, but it's all built for this moment. It's all, so that we're geared to be successful in December. And, you look at the schedule that they did put together this season and the body of work in and of itself. And, the record overall is going to be something that might cause Gopher fans or casual fans to do a little bit of a double take, what have you. But, you look at how it's paid off and where this team has gotten better, and it's paid dividends here down the stretch for sure.
And, Nebraska, we know about Nebraska and Omaha and Creighton, and it's volleyball crazy. So certainly Minnesota's going into a hornet's nest there, particularly if they advance and presumably play Creighton in that second game on Saturday. Certainly it'll be a stiff challenge. I did want to ask you about the season itself, and certainly there is always, it seems, when a coaching change takes place, and I think particularly when a coach takes over for a successful program. It's one thing if a guy or a woman or whoever it is, I say guy in a general sense, not to mean that it has to be a male, of course, but when a coach comes in and it's an overhaul or a rebuild, sometimes because the team's been terrible, there's no way to go but up, right? So you see an immediate impact and you think, man, coaching matters. Look at that. I think of Wisconsin hockey, for example, right? With Mike Hastings taking over, they haven't been very good in recent years, and 2 weeks ago they're the number one ranked team in the country. It's a little different in this case when you take over a power of this is a true blue blood in volleyball, and when you've had success and then things change a little bit and nothing's right, nothing's wrong. It doesn't matter. I'm not saying that the way it was correct and the way it is now isn't, or vice versa, but there is a little clash isn't the right word, but maybe a little confusion as they're trying to weave their way from what has been successful into a new path to be successful. And clearly it took some time, and I want to ask you specifically about the Rutgers match, because I think that was a road loss, right? You and I were at the football stadium, and I remember you telling me during a commercial break, hey, Grimmer, they just lost at Rutgers, and we're like, whoa, that's not good because Rutgers has not been great. My understanding is they had a players' meeting after that, and really from that point on, I think it seems this group made the decision, look, we can be better than this, and they have been.
Yeah, we started the season ranked number 7. We looked really good against 2 Big 12 teams to open the season, 2 teams that obviously went on to have successful seasons. Lost to Texas, who's going to be nobody's worst loss. Lost to Florida's going to be nobody's worst loss. And then went out west, split a couple of matches with Oregon and Stanford. Oregon, as it turns out, far and away our best victory this year. And then split a couple of matches here against High Point and Creighton before we got to the Big Ten slate. So, 4-4 wasn't how people necessarily thought we'd go into the conference slate, but it's not going to shock a whole lot of people either. We still felt pretty good about everything. Start of the year, it seemed everything was going fine through the later portion of September. But then, like you said, we got into that early October swing where we went out east. We dropped a 5-set contest in Maryland on a Friday night, and then the following night, we lose to Rutgers, and those are 2 losses. You just don't come to expect from the Minnesota program, and the players really took ownership of that. And I give Keegan a ton of credit. With the expectations and the pressure put on him, it's a tough place to inherit a program that's been really good for a long time. And, there's a lot thought of the program. There's high expectations immediately, whether you're a first-year coach or a 21st-year head coach. And, I think he's done a great job just navigating that and finding ways to adapt and help the team become more successful, put them in positions to succeed. And, the players, I give them a ton of credit. They really took ownership of it. There's always going to be new faces, it seems like, in the area of the transfer portal. There's always different players that you've got to mold and merge together and just kind of find ways to get everybody to gel. And the team said, we're not playing up to that Golden Gopher volleyball standard, and really took that upon themselves, and they owned it. And I give them a ton of credit for it. Keegan kept the ship together, and this team's found a way to play our best volleyball going into December.
Could you maybe quantify or qualify what, in addition to just maybe mentality-wise, were there things on the court you noticed that they did better after maybe that Rutgers match, and what's been kind of clicking here of late for them on the court?
I think our serving has been our best aspect of our game, and I think that goes back even before the start of Big Ten play, but I think that's continued to get better over the course of the season. I think that's probably our biggest strength as a team when we get onto the court. But I'm noticing, a lot of individuals that have tooled their game and have continued to step up. Kylie Murr was a great pickup for us in the transfer portal, the reigning Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, and she's been a stalwart all season long. really making sure that we're set defensively. And, she's very much earned that title, and she'll be, I think, in the running to repeat that honor, once those awards come out on Thursday. Taylor Landfair's a player I know had a lot of expectations for her coming into this season, winning Big Ten Player of the Year a season ago. And, her numbers weren't eye-popping early in the season, and defensively, I think a lot of teams would go after her in serve receive, and it's really cool to see where she's come from the start of the season to now, as she's gotten more comfortable in Keegan's system. Offensively, the last 3 weeks, she's been playing as well as anybody has offensively, and not just on our team, within the conference. Her numbers are starting to mirror the body of work she put together a season ago. And, defensively, teams aren't going after her anymore in serve receive. She's done a great job. It's really cool to see where she's come in just the last couple of months. As she gets more comfortable back there. So, she really seems like she's coming into her own and playing her best volleyball. And we all know how good of a player she is and what she means to the team. Melanie Shapmaster, she just runs our offense so well. She's always got a lot of pressure on her to be able to set everybody up to contribute. And I know how much time she puts in just making sure her sets are on, and, time outside the gym, outside of practice, just building continuity with her hitters, making sure that she knows where they like the ball, where she can put it. And she's just done a great job running the offense. And, we're finding ways to get the ball to the middle a lot. That's something we weren't doing a whole lot early in the season. We've got somebody like Erica Davis who can really take over a match, and her touches are going up. We're finding ways to get the ball more to the middles. I think, as talented as our outside and opposite hitters are, that, we tend to try to get them the ball as much as possible. And I think we're doing a much better job diversifying the offense and really sharing the sugar, getting the ball toward all of our playmakers. And it's paid dividends here down the stretch.
What are your observations now, too, as the regular season is wrapped up with what Keegan Cook has done in year one? You think about with the transfer portal, just with the coaching change in general, there were some, even before Keegan got hired, there were some commitments. And Hugh, I thought, was classy about this. He could have waited until after signing day to announce, but he wanted to be fair to everyone. So they lose a couple of recruits, a couple people transfer. All of a sudden, he has to hit the portal. You mentioned Murr and some others, Grote from Cal. And I know I'm forgetting some, but and then you're trying to meld together, these newcomers. Freshmen come in as well, and there's ups, there's downs, there's new styles. How would you assess what you saw and observed from Keegan Cook and how he navigated through what was a challenging first season?
I think he's done a great job. He's had a lot of different players that have had to come in, like you said, and he's got to find a way to mold them into kind of a finished product here over the course of 3 months. And, he's brought in several different skill set of players, not just players, but, a lot of players with different aspects of their game that make them special. Kylie Murr's game is a lot different from Lydia Groves, a lot different from Phoebe Awalea, a lot different from Zinette Polabiak, who, I should mention, we brought her in right before school started, and, got to get her acclimated really darn quick. The top libero in the European class this offseason, and she's worked her way into the regular rotation now, and we're really seeing what she can bring to the table. So, you're doing this on the fly, and it's a certain style of volleyball I think they play out in the West Coast that maybe is a little bit different than here in the Big Ten. I know Iowa kind of runs a system like some of those schools do out there, but Keegan, I think, has done a good job kind of bringing everybody in, not just adapting what they can bring to the table as a unit, but then kind of adapting how he runs things night in, night out in the Big Ten. So, it's been a giant learning curve for him here in year one. And, I think a lot of people are going to maybe look back on this, whether the season ends this weekend, or, in Pittsburgh in a couple of weeks, or if we can make a run, whatever it may be. I think people may look back on it and think, it was just a weird season to go for volleyball, maybe a down year. Some people clarify it, but I think you take in a lot of those circumstances, and people are going to look back on it. They're going to realize what a great job he did here in year one.
If the Gophers get out of this weekend, what will have had to have happened? What were some keys? If you and I were talking on Monday, what's your prediction? Let's say the Gophers make the Sweet 16. How would it unfold in your mind, or how will it unfold?
biggest things that we did well fundamentally in Big Ten play were our serving and then limiting self-inflicted errors. We finished second in the Big Ten in terms of fewest attack errors. I think only Wisconsin was better, but we did not shoot ourselves in the foot. And that's what you got to do at this time of year. You can't, especially if you're going on the road and you're trying to knock off a team like Creighton and, like I said, a hostile volleyball hungry environment down there. You've got to not be your own worst enemy and take care of business yourself. And our serving's always been a great aspect of what we've done this year. Aces, the numbers have been good, but beyond that, I think you get up there and you've got a lot of different players that make it really difficult on opponents in serve receive, whether they're putting some type of spin on the ball, what have you, what it may be, and then just getting you uncomfortable once you get into serve receive. So those are the two biggest things for me. Our defense has been really solid all year. We've been up amongst the Big Ten leaders in terms of digs, and we do a lot of the little things right, and that's what you got to do this time of year. So we're showing off our depth. We're getting a lot more players involved, and I think that's what it's going to take. This time of year is really going to expose how deep you are, and we're certainly deeper than the last time we saw Creighton. I'm sure that it's the same thing for them. So, how many playmakers can you funnel in and how many different players can get involved and how many weapons can you show off, I think really separates teams this time of year.
Well, you will have the call on the Gopher Radio Network. That's on the Varsity Network app, the iHeart app, locally within the Twin Cities, 102.5 FM. It's a Friday, 4 o'clock, right, in the afternoon, so someone's still at work or someone's heading home on the drive home, and they want to listen. That's how to do it. So I'm looking forward to listening myself.
I appreciate that, Mike. I know a lot of fans will subscribe to Big Ten Plus, what have you, throughout the year, and the tournament obviously gets carried in the ESPN family of networks. And maybe there's some folks that aren't, got to get that subscription for the month, what have you. So the Gopher Radio Network's all that more happy to have you covered.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Well, very good, and hopefully you call two, and hopefully you call 2 wins.
Looking forward to it. Hopefully a week from now we'll be getting set for a trip to Pittsburgh.
My thanks to Tanner Hoops for joining me on today's Go Gopher podcast to preview this weekend's NCAA Tournament opening round in Omaha. And also my thanks to Ryan Burns, who joined us earlier from Gopher Illustrated as we talked Gopher football. Episode 98 is presented by Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. If you're buying or selling a business, visit sunbeltminnesota.com or tnma.com. We're also partnered with Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union, a locally member-owned full-service financial invested in you. You can learn more at affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. Cub is also one of our primary sponsors here on the Go Gopher podcast. Cub is the official grocer of the Golden Gophers. We're also brought to you by State Farm agent Tony Hoagland. Again, I'd invite you to listen to past podcasts, and right now, click that subscribe button to the Go Gopher podcast. It's free to subscribe and free to listen at any point. And please share the link to the podcast with others so they can also subscribe and listen. We'll talk again next week.